Welcome to Work in Progress, Conversations with Creators. I'm your host, Logan Royce-Beitman. On today's program, I have with me John Phillip Abbott, a really interesting painter who uses text, geometric abstraction, and creates personal narratives. We had a really fascinating conversation about spirituality, Sun Ra, all kinds of things. I hope that you enjoy.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
Hi, John. Welcome.
Hey, Logan. Thank you for having me.
No, this is fantastic. I'm really excited. When I started this, I assumed that probably most of my guests would be painters, but I've had very few. So it's nice to have a painter. Nice. And I'm sure, some people will be excited. And you brought one of your pieces with you, which this piece is a finished piece.
It is.
But it's kind of we can call it a work in progress because it's a new body of work.
Yeah, the body of work
a lot of people haven't seen.
It's very much a work in progress. Yeah, it's much more maximal than my previous work. But I'm still making my previous work too, concurrent to these. So wherever the day kind of takes me. But these are really captivating me now. This one is titled Future Perfect. The language is intentionally supposed to be obscured. So it's a relationship between like seeing and reading. And I like the idea of like having text be about text and writing. So like my mom was an English teacher. And so like the idea of verb tenses is a thing.
Yeah. And actually, let me just interrupt you briefly.
Yeah,
just
please.
So we can kind of go back and then let's get into this particular piece. But to talk about your work in general, for people who may not be familiar, it's sort of, I guess you'd say, sort of text-based art, text-based paintings. The paintings look abstract, and what we see is the colors and the shapes, but there's actually letters, written out in them that make words. And part of the game is kind of figuring out what it says, I guess, but it's about a lot more than that. But I guess maybe talk a little bit more about how you started into you've been doing this for a long time. I met you like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you were doing these paintings that had words as part of the structure of the painting. So just talk a little bit about that and how you started into it.
I've always had an interest in writing. In high school, I wanted to be a poet. That was my main aim. I was really into the Romantics, and I wrote a lot of poetry. And typically, my journals would have like a poem on one side and then like a visual representation of what I wrote on the other side. And so over time, it seems like they've kind of become intermelded,
right?
Which is interesting. And like growing up, Shel Silverstein was a huge influence when I was like 8 years old. And that idea again of like the visual with the poem was, that was a pivotal experience in my childhood, like having exposure to Shel Silverstein. And so then fast forward to graduate school. I fell in love with painting as an undergraduate in New Mexico, painting in the Gila National Forest. I fell in love with landscape painting of all things.
Yeah.
And in fact, I really fell in love with Milton Avery at that time, who has a show up at Karma right now, which looks amazing in New York. But I went to study sculpture. Predominantly. I was like 22. I was living in downtown Houston, within walking distance, like to the Menil collection.
Yeah.
And my landlord became a really good friend of mine, and he was a South African plumber / land baron. And he introduced me to bending copper. And so he was really generous and kind and spent a lot of time with me, helping me realize like sculptural ideas that I had. And I was like, okay, I think I want to do this like formally. And so ended up moving to New Mexico to study sculpture. That kind of led me into performance art. When I was in Houston, I also, through my friend that was also my landlord, befriended Robert Delford Brown, who was living in Houston at the time. And he was a performance artist as well as a maker of all sorts, painter. And he moved from New York City And he had the First International Church of the Exquisite Panic Incorporated was this religion that he founded, and they would pray to who, because who knows.
Right.
Dun-dun-dun, yeah. So, but that was a big influence on me too, and I was able to partake in one of his performance pieces, which was really great. And so, sculpture, performance, that was like something that was really interesting to me when I went to study art. But then I discovered painting, and the immediacy of it, the directness of it, really was compelling. And then fast forward to graduate school at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I was continuing on this kind of like figurative landscape track, very Diebenkorn-esque.
Right.
And I was like really spending a lot of time looking for source material to work from. And almost too much time. Like it became like, am I a painter or am I just like seeking out source material to paint from? And so then I started writing again, writing down what I was looking for. Like for example, an image of a Datsun, a car. I had a Datsun, and so it made more sense, and it seemed more economical, more direct, just to write Datsun than be spending hours looking for a Datsun. So It was the immediacy, the directness that felt really authentic and sincere and honest to me, and that's kind of how I ended up going back into text. And then for me, it became like a vehicle to make a painting, like a landscape or a portrait would be, and then you start. The tape happened really organically. It was just a kind of way to slow down the process of writing and to organize space, again, in a really economical and direct way. And then those letter forms turned into like stripes or diamonds, like a K would create like a diamond shape. And then there was like this marriage between like that formal language that the text was kind of yielding and the text itself. And so through it all, I became like a geometric abstract painter, not intentionally, but that's just kind of what the cards were dealt.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I went. Then I discovered, folks like Peter Halley who were doing things with the history of geometric abstraction and kind of creating almost like a narrative from that language. And that became really compelling to me.
Yeah, and for people that are watching, they see your painting here, even though this is like a bit more complicated than some of the earlier ones that are more legible. They can see it's on a grid structure,
right?
And basically each square of that grid is a letter, and you can tell people what it says. It says future perfect.
It says future perfect.
So maybe people can decipher it if you look close.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the future being perfect. That's something that really resonates with me.
Yeah.
I also like that it's about language itself, verb tenses and whatnot. So and there's a history there. So usually there's some sort of like currency, some sort of association to the text. Although it's been getting I've been getting more and more away from that since I first began working this way, where it did feel like it had to be autobiographical in order to justify the language, and it felt more honest and sincere and authentic. But now it can be like a recreational vehicle, like, have the great names on the sides. Space travel would be a really cool RV name or something, because you're traveling through space.
I like it. It's like the words that you choose are very evocative, and certainly in the past, they have had a kind of diaristic quality. It's been related to your life. I remember. I mean, I met you because I was working at a gallery in Palm Beach, and we had a solo show of your work. And at that point, it was all about New Mexico. You had a piece that was called Very Large Array, which is something out here, high desert. And so these are and then the way that you do the spray paint, it creates these sort of accidents and flashes of brilliant sort of almost cosmic effects, which are really cool. So there's this sort of abstract painting thing happening, and then there's the text and the geometry of the text, and it's pretty cool. And I think, but that idea that it's still somehow rooted, at least in that work, in the landscape and in the land here.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I wouldn't call you a landscape painter,
right?
Which you had been,
But
you're a painter.
I wasn't a good landscape painter. I should preface in saying that I was very bad. I would spend hours. I love the process, but I would always walk away with like wiped down paintings. But still grateful for the experience. But it felt like it was a placeholder for something else at the time, even when I was painting the landscape. But yeah, I do think of them as like, cosmic landscapes. I've been listening to a lot of Sun Ra and this idea of cosmic imagery kind of yielding imagery, cosmic vibes yielding imagery is appealing to me. And the Transcendental Painting Group too, like Raymond Johnson,
right.
and who also was using an airbrush. I don't use an airbrush anymore. I use spray paint because of the immediacy, because of the directness, because I can't handle it. Like I want to be part of this like graffiti culture. It's so cool, but I'm not skilled as a spray paint artist. I'm not a spray paint artist, but the idea of like using it as a vehicle to apply pigment to a surface is really interesting to me. And the reaction to the spray paint on the raw canvas, there's like a texture that comes out, which is really compelling to me. It has like a three-dimensional quality. I think going back to Peter Halley, I think of like a nappy roller creating that found texture.
Yeah.
I'm finding that with the spray paint on the raw canvas, and I don't find that with the airbrush. And there's more accidents that happen with the spray paint as well that I really like. But yeah, there's still, I think those the work that you were referencing in Palm Beach, like they did kind of feel like Transcendental Painting Group kind of landscape inspired, New Mexico landscape especially inspired paintings with the horizon and with the space and with the gradations. So I feel like that's still part of the work, and maybe now they are getting in this work a little bit more cosmic,
Yeah, and thinking about Sun Ra, I think Sun Ra was thinking about the future.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. A couple weeks ago we put out a interview I did with Fred Frith, the experimental musician. He talked about meeting Sun Ra. So this seems to be, I don't know. He's
everyone should pause this
now.
and go watch that that interview because it was really fantastic.
But yeah, I do see there's like a kind of even like thinking about his album covers, which I don't know who the artist, if it was the same one that did it, but sort of abstract, kind of cosmic imagery. I see something of that here as well.
And a lot of gold too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think it's like the alchemy of gold. And I definitely want to reiterate what we spoke about earlier, where it's not about opulence like the gold.
Yeah.
I'm not referencing that at all. Like I'm thinking of gold as an alchemic kind of property, kind of like harking back to Emery Blagden, this outsider artist from Nebraska that passed away, I think, in '86, whose work I just love so much. And he was using electricity and metallic colors and really bold colors to create what he perceived as a healing machine. Yeah. And I love that idea of like maybe an installation of paintings acting as like a healing machine potentially, or that, like we talked about before too, like just being a vehicle for making paintings. That seems to be really interesting to me. And there needs to be a lot of healing happening right now. So it feels really good to be in the studio and thinking at the very least about healing, about positivity, about the future, about cosmic energy, especially like during this time. I feel like the scale in which I'm working, which is really quite large, like 88 by 72 inches, and using like fluorescent color, and which feels like it's a similar key to the metallic colors I'm using as well. But all that seems like it could be perceived as being really ostentatious or outside of this moment, when work should be kind of scaled down, should be more humble, should be more referencing the past. I feel like maybe these are kind of like prehistoric computers from the future, is kind of how I'm perceiving this newer work, because they're not slick enough to feel futuristic. There's a rawness to them, which I embrace, and there are accidents, which I also embrace. But there is like something computer chip-esque to them, like a tapestry, right, of computer circuitry that I think is interesting in this moment as well. So I feel like they're kind of counterculture in that regard. But for me, they feel really, I feel really excited to make them. And I'm really grateful to be having this moment in the studio where I can work for 14 hours and just get like totally lost in the making and trying to figure my way out of certain moves or certain things that have happened, a lot of correcting things. And I just love that. That's great.
Yeah, and I think, knowing you a little bit and hearing you talk now and thinking about the work, I feel like, how do I say this? Like, I feel like at heart you're like a lyrical painter. Like, there's some idea that like a sort of hard-edged geometric painter is very kind of heady, and it's not about feeling.
Right,
So
right.
your work has so much feeling in it. It's also not perfect. It's deliberately imperfect. And these kind of like, colors bleed and all, like you'd see in sort of lyrical abstraction work. And even, thinking about text artists too, like some of the most famous ones, who like Lawrence Weiner or Kay Rosen.
Yeah, love Kay Rosen.
I love Kay, if people don't know, like she has a painting that's just the word blurred, but like the BLU is painted blue and the RED is painted red. So it's like blue, red, and then the middle is purple. That's just an example of her work. So it's her work. It's often a sort of pun, a visual pun, using language in that way. And I think that kind of, which I love the work.
Yeah.
But when I first saw your work, I was sort of expecting it to be like that. And I was like, oh, I don't get the pun, or I don't get it. It's not about language games.
Right.
It's very much more like the words evoke something personal in you. It's something about your life experience. It's poetic. And then you might do a whole series that's the same word over and different, but they're each one you're kind of a little bit free and they look different. Maybe talk about that. Do you know, am I right?
Oh yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah. No, that sounds great. There is a distinction there, and I do look for language that's open-ended and allows for that poetic rumination. I write poetry sometimes. I still write. I enjoy writing. I love it. But I don't consider myself to be a poet when it comes to painting. I feel like I'm more of like a word/text hoarder. Like I'm just accumulating words that I see or that I come across or that I read, like the recreational vehicle, for example, as a funny example. And then it's like transmogrifying that into something that feels like it takes on its own life, and coupled with the figure ground relationship that occurs like in the work too, it becomes something unexpected for me as well, which I appreciate. But yeah, I definitely am striving for that like kind of like poetic viewing, hopefully manifesting something poetic for the viewer when confronted with the work and trying to reconcile the text kind of with the imagery.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about your life growing up.
Yeah.
And did you want to be an artist when you were a kid?
Well, like I said, I wanted to be a poet. I made some. My mom was a teacher, and I made some posters for her classroom, and like cartoon characters. And I don't know, I must have been like 9 or 10. And this was a huge moment for me because I was up till like 2, 3 in the morning, with my markers and with poster board. And I was listening to Buddy Holly's greatest hits, which I reference quite a bit. I love Buddy Holly, and. And it was like this magical moment where I felt like, time escaped me, and I was just in that moment of making. And it was like, I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was like, this feels really good. And I love this space that I'm in. And so I think, unintentionally has been trying to get back to that space, right? Of just like, not thinking about life and death, not thinking about our political, social situation, an escape. And I had a show a couple of years ago, The Great Escape, and that's kind of referencing like the studio practice as an escape. And I think that goes back to that moment when I was 9 or 10 making those posters, and really kind of discovered the making as an escape, and that was really compelling to me. But grew up in Wausau, Wisconsin. I have a whole series of Wausau paintings. This is a great word, and it was like this insurance company, and they would spell it out in the commercials, WAUSAU. Then we ended up moving to Houston, and I've been kind of going back and forth to Houston throughout my adolescence, early adulthood. Spent some time living in Louisiana, which was a really interesting experience culturally. It's like its own world, kind of like New Mexico is in a way, like its own country. Then back to Houston, and ended up moving back to Wisconsin when I was 16 to live with extended family. Finished up my high school there, and that's where I discovered poetry and writing and kind of really came into my own. And I think then it became clear that I wanted to be an artist of some sort. I didn't know what that looked like. A non-traditional path after that. Went to Austin, lived in Austin for a little bit, then back to Houston, and was doing some construction. And then again, that's when I really decided I wanted to be an artist, when I had the experience of making that sculpture with my South African friend, Larry, and going to the Manil, which was amazing. The Rothko Chapel was right there. This was all like, I could take a little break from working construction and go check out the Rothko Chapel.
Was the
amazing.
Rothko Chapel a big, like that had a big impact on you?
I didn't go every day. I definitely went to the Manil a lot more than the Rothko Chapel.
Or was there something at the Manil that was that stood out that you remember?
There were Rothkos at the Manil too.
Yeah, so Rothko was a big
I guess so.
figure for you.
Yeah.
Which makes sense to
Yeah,
me.
right. But I think even more than the Manil and the Rothko Chapel was getting to hang out with Robert Delford Brown, this First International Church of the Exquisite Panic Incorporated artist and seeing what he was making. And he was making these maps to Nevada, because Nevada is easier to find than Nirvana. Again, another pun.
Right.
Like, it's like, give me a break, right? But these are so great. And they were like tabletop paintings that he would pour in Virotex, I think is what it was, build a form, and he would coat them so that they were inaccessible and sealed, but you could still see through the sealant. And so like that was that. The creativity, the joyfulness in making, the experimentation between forms and mediums, that to me was really exciting. And to see that firsthand, that was a pivotal moment for me.
Yeah, and there's something maybe to that work and some of your, maybe especially the newer work you're doing that you're saying is kind of cosmic and has to do with healing, but where it's like, there is this like spiritual dimension, even with, I think, maybe his performances, but a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but also a little bit serious and kind of on that edge, right?
So maybe in between Rothko and Robert Delford Brown is where I'm kind of like locating myself. Because there is, I would like to think there is a sincerity and authenticity to my work, and that it's not tongue-in-cheek. There is often, I think there's room for humor, and I think humor is a beautiful thing. I think humor is really serious and important. But that's not my only jam, right? Like I want to be able to access humor, but I also want to access really serious things as well. I want to speak to life and death, even though we can get consumed with that. But hopefully there's enough room in the oeuvre to explore a lot of different emotions, a lot of different feelings, a lot of different ideas. Right? That's what keeps us going forward.
No, I think it's really interesting. And just, like I had a friend who I think spent like $5,000 for someone to touch him with like a magic wand that was supposed to activate his DNA.
Oh, that's awesome.
And,
what a great use of $5,000.
I told my friend who's like a biologist, he's like, you don't want all your DNA activated. That's how you get cancer. I don't know, whatever it is. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but so it's like I don't buy into all that kind of things. But at the same time, like if I'm like stressed out, trying to focus or trying to go to sleep, I'll bring up on like some music that's supposed to be a certain frequency to create relaxation.
Yeah.
That and I find it's therapeutic and useful.
Yeah.
So and I'll do some meditation sometimes or things, So I think that I sort of always sit on that edge of like open to these kind of ideas, but also like a little bit skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as an artist or as a painter, whatever, as a maker, like if the idea generates work, then I'm all for it, even if it's like crazy or outlandish, or if I don't really believe it, or if maybe I want to investigate the belief of it, But ultimately, it's about getting lost in the studio practice. And so, I love the idea. Like, it makes me want to make wands, like that. Like, why not make your own? Like for $5,000, you can make a really good wand. That'd be really interesting.
Yours would be a work of art, and you could sell it for at least that, So
or give them away, free wands.
Sure.
Access your DNA with free wands.
You have a friend around here that gives away art. Right?
Yes, Jonathan Harshorn, wonderful artist. We've been friends for over a decade now. Jeez, maybe 15 years now. Yeah, crazy time. Time's a trip. He has had he's an incredible artist, and he's had incredible shows all over the world, and gives away paintings. Yeah, and I love that idea. Yeah, like the free wand, right? He'll like have a solo show somewhere in Albuquerque. Be on the lookout, everyone. And you could pick up your own Jonathan Hartshorn.
Like he just puts his paintings around like a park or something.
Yeah.
If you're there, then you get it.
And again, it's I think there's like a relational aesthetics component to where he chooses to set up his shows. So that's meaningful to him. There is like this poetic experience, and it feels really authentic and sincere and beautiful too. I love that notion of like making something and just kind of like giving it away.
Yeah.
But then he'll also have a show and sell his work for thousands of dollars.
Right.
Which might be problematic for the gallery. I'm not sure how that relationship works.
Hopefully he enjoys the shout out here.
Yeah.
So I think let's just we can kind of finish up. Let's go back to this piece and since we've kind of been dancing around it, but do you think art can be healing, and if so, how?
I think the making of it can be healing. And that's the only thing I can control, right? And so I think for me, like getting lost in painting, lost in making an object is healing. And whether what I make heals others, that's beyond my control. And so it's that idea of accepting what you can't control. And when I'm in the studio, I can accept that. Those are my parameters that I can work within, and I can control and manipulate and make my own. And I love the idea of like Emery Blagden's healing machine.
Yeah.
And even he was uncertain as to, he ultimately died of cancer, and his family died of cancer, like everyone died of cancer. And he had a lot of heartbreak. And so that's what led him to making the healing machine, was he genuinely believed that he could make a machine that healed people. And there are stories of people like getting teary-eyed, reflecting back on being subjected to Emery's healing machine in terms of how powerful it was. And so I would like to think that objects can heal, I'm not trying to sell that idea necessarily, but I feel like we all have it within ourselves to send out those healing cosmic vibes that Sun Ra kind of talks about. And whether we get it from something, that's great. No judgment, I guess, if people find their $5,000 wand as like giving them a healing power, more power to them, right? But I would like to think it's more accessible than that, and I could think of a million better uses for that $5,000, especially here in Albuquerque. But
this is someone in New York.
Yeah. Fair enough. So I don't know is the short answer to that question.
Yeah.
Of whether art can heal.
But it's interesting. Yeah, Sun Ra, Mark Rothko, there's some.
I don't know if I fit in there, but yeah.
But no, I don't know. I think it's this also, it reminds me sort of like a mandala or something, that kind of, which would be used in some cases for healing or to kind of focus the mind at least.
And they're really process-oriented healing vehicles, right? Like it is about impermanence, right? So it's like the healing comes through the making. Yeah. And so like I think of sand art, right? And sand paintings, very much so being temporal. Yeah.
No, it's cool. And all your work, it has that kind of like almost offhand, almost sort of drop cloth aesthetic thing happening, that's like not too perfect. It's a little, Yeah,
it's raw canvas. That should be pointed out. Yeah, right. Yeah, so, there's not a slickness to it. The work in Palm Beach, I was fetishizing the surface quite a bit. There was like a lot of sanding going on to get this like really smooth surface. And then there was like this revelation. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like trying to make the canvas into something it doesn't want to be. And I'm working so hard to achieve that. And so then it was like moving back to raw canvas and really embracing the rawness of the work. So coupled with like the tape, which has, you don't think of tape as being like raw. Yeah. You think of it has like this slickness association to it. And I think I fight that a lot. I still like to think of these as being very human-made, even though there is like a post-analog quality to the making of them. But with the AI and things like this, like the idea of like what is analog and what is not analog seems like it's becoming increasingly blurred.
Sure.
Like now even like a slick airbrush painting seems analog. Whereas, 10 years ago, that would have been considered way post-analog.
So maybe like because of that, you're pushing more into that handmade, like I'm a
right.
human. This
Yeah,
is
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think that I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate
And
that.
and hopefully this will be interesting to listeners, especially people who paint. So if so, let us know. And thank you so much for being here. This was really a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much, Logan. I appreciate your time.